Sumatra, a mysterious island lost amidst the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. Here, in the very heart of the jungle, there are places where even light cannot penetrate. Ancient trees stand as silent witnesses of time, and between their twisted roots, a thick mist spreads, slowly enveloping the ground. These are not just forests. This is a kingdom that has never bowed to man. A place where nature has preserved its oldest secrets. Expeditions disappear here. Tracks of those who ventured too far are lost. And those who return speak of seeing something in the darkness that should not exist. The local tribes know about it. They have lived here for centuries and passed down one simple truth from generation to generation. Some things are better left undiscovered. They do not try to explain it with scientific terms. They simply say, if you go too far, do not seek with your eyes the one who hides in the shadows. This is not a legend. This is a warning. There are stories that make you doubt everything you know. One of them is the tale of Dutch colonists who arrived in Sumatra at the beginning of the 20th century. They were men of science, rationalists who laughed at local superstitions. But laughter quickly turned to silence when footprints began to appear in the forests. Prints that did not belong to any known animal. Small yet strong, with broad fingers and deep imprints. They looked as if they were left by something that walked like a human, but was not human. At first, it was intriguing, then unsettling. In a camp set up on the outskirts of the jungle, strange things began to happen. At night, something prowled near the tents, but every time the guards went out with lanterns, they found nothing. Scattered belongings, fingerprints on the damp ground, missing food supplies. They did not believe in the supernatural. They tried to dismiss it as coincidence. But then, one of the men saw the eyes. It happened at dawn, when the mist still clung to the ground, and the sun was only beginning to pierce through the thick canopy. He stood by the tent, drinking hot coffee, when he felt someone watching him. At first, he thought it was just fatigue, but the feeling did not fade. He looked up, and between the branches, just a few meters away, something was standing. A short, stocky figure, covered in thick, dark fur. It did not move, only watched. And in that stillness, there was something too conscious. This was no wild beast, no ape. This was something else. He wanted to scream, but could not. He wanted to move, but his body did not obey. Fear or something more. He blinked, and the figure was gone. Soundlessly, instantly. That same day, the colonists decided to leave the camp. They told no one what they had seen. They did not try to explain it. They simply left, and they never returned to those places. That story was just one of many. Scientists may ignore them, but what happens when there are too many to dismiss? Hunters who venture deeper into the jungle return silent. They say they no longer wish to go there. That sometimes, when you sit by the fire, something sits beside you in the darkness. You do not see it, but you feel it. And the worst part are the eyes. They say that anyone who has ever looked into those eyes will never be able to forget them. Because in them, there is something no animal should possess. If this is just a myth, why does it feel so alive? If this is just a story, why do those who have encountered it never speak of it again? What if, somewhere out there, in the darkness of the trees, something truly lives alongside us, yet never allows itself to be found. Documented cases of encounters with an unknown creature in Sumatra began to appear at the beginning of the 20th century, when Dutch colonists arrived on the island. Until then, stories about a mysterious two-legged creature existed only among local tribes who passed them down from generation to generation. But while the Dutch considered these stories myths, many of them later changed their minds. The first official mentions of Orang Pendek began to appear after European planters, loggers, and explorers repeatedly reported strange tracks, unusual behavior of local animals, and, in some cases, direct encounters with an incomprehensible creature. One of the earliest cases to receive documentary confirmation was the testimony of Dutch planter Willem Oosting in 1917. His workers often talked about seeing a little man in the forest, but he did not attach importance to this. They described it as a short, stocky creature with long arms and thick fur, walking on two legs and having a very sharp gaze. At first, this seemed to him to be a local superstition. But when he personally discovered strange tracks on his rubber plantation, his skepticism began to weaken. The tracks did not belong to any known animal. They were similar to human ones, but wider, with strong fingers and a deep imprint in the soft soil. A few weeks later, he personally saw the silhouette of the creature between the trees. It did not hide, but it did not approach either. Oosting watched it for about a minute before it disappeared into the branches. His description completely coincided with what the locals told. After this incident, he no longer denied the story of the little man and ordered the workers not to enter certain areas of the forest. Another important case occurred in 1923. Dutch naturalist M. van Geweerden, who studied the nature of Sumatra, recorded in his notes the observation of an unknown creature. During one of the expeditions, when he was near the river, he noticed something strange moving among the branches. Space. It was neither a monkey nor a man, but something in between. His description is detailed. Height, about 120 to 140 centimeters. Stocky, muscular body structure. Thick, reddish or dark brown fur. Long, strong arms. But what struck him most were the eyes. Deep, very expressive, similar to human ones. He noted that the creature moved on two legs. Its posture was more similar to human than primates. But what struck him most was its gaze. It was not just the instinctive gaze of an animal. It was the gaze of awareness, he wrote. The creature stood nearby, watching him, as if assessing him, before disappearing into the depths of the forest without a sound. This testimony was one of the most significant, since it was made by a naturalist, a man of science who was familiar with the local fauna and could distinguish an ordinary animal from something incomprehensible. In the 1920s and 1930s, colonists and explorers repeatedly found strange tracks, samples of fur, and even heard incomprehensible sounds in the depths of the forest. In one case, described in 1932, British explorer Stanley Wright, together with a group of workers, came across a series of prints that seemed completely fresh. They followed them for several hours, but were never able to catch up with the creature. At some point, the tracks simply disappeared, as if the creature had jumped into the trees or disappeared into the forest. The lack of evidence only fueled the rumors. Various theories began to emerge among explorers and colonists. Some believed that it was an unknown species of primate, perhaps a relict subspecies of orangutan that had evolved the ability to walk on two legs. Others suggested that it might be the last representative of an extinct human species similar to Homo floresiensis, which had somehow survived in isolation. The more evidence accumulated, the more it became clear that this was not just random fiction. Someone or something really lived in the jungles of Sumatra. But what exactly remained a mystery. The local inhabitants of Sumatra have never doubted the existence of the Orang Pendek. For them, it's not a myth or a legend, but a reality that they have been facing for centuries. While European colonists were only just beginning to record cases of encounters, the indigenous peoples of the island have long known that a creature that does not belong to any known species lives in the depths of the forests. They do not consider it a monkey, but they do not perceive it as a person either. In their stories, it's something in between. Intelligent, cunning, and almost elusive. Shamans and tribal elders say that the Orang Pendek can only be seen when it wants to. It watches people from afar, assesses them, but rarely comes close. However, there are stories about those who entered forbidden places, and then the creature made it clear that this was its territory. Sometimes it was just traces that appeared around the camp. Sometimes a feeling of someone else's presence. But there were also those who saw it up close. One of the most interesting cases occurred in 1989. Researcher Deborah Martyr, who worked in Sumatra to study the local fauna, received many stories from locals about a mysterious, two-legged creature. Unlike the colonists, she took it seriously because she had experience working with unknown species. For several months, she collected data, analyzed the evidence, until she finally saw it with her own eyes. It happened in one of the remote parts of the island. She was walking through the forest with her guides when one of the locals suddenly stopped and quietly pointed ahead. At first, she didn't see anything, but then she noticed it. A short, stocky creature stood between the trees, not trying to hide, but not showing aggression either. Its long arms barely touched the ground, and its thick fur merged with the shadows of the forest. But most importantly, its gaze. She could not call it an animal gaze. It was an intelligent, analyzing gaze, as if weighing who was standing in front of it. Deborah wrote that the encounter lasted a few seconds, but that was enough to understand. This was not a monkey, and this was not just a primate. This was something that knew more than we could have assumed. After that, she began to actively study this phenomenon, collecting testimonies from hunters, elders, and other eyewitnesses. What is puzzling is the fact that all descriptions of the creature are practically identical, although many of those who spoke about it had never had contact with each other. This confirms that the stories about Orang Pendek are not just a local myth passed down within the same tribe. Moreover, some witnesses recalled cases when the creature copied human behavior. For example, watching how hunters light a fire, or taking an interest in their equipment. Meetings with it leave the impression that the creature is not just avoiding people, but deliberately hiding, understanding that it should not be found. Those who have seen it up close cannot explain the feeling in words, but they say it was unlike contact with a wild animal. It was something different, something that perceived them differently than an ordinary animal perceives a person. This mystery's only intensified when you consider the fact that over the past 100 years, there's been a lot of evidence, but not a single high-quality photo or video. Some researchers believe that the Orang Pendek is extremely difficult to capture because it senses surveillance and can avoid cameras, traps, and other devices. The question then arises, if it's not an animal, then what is it? What else could live in the jungles of Sumatra and know that it's being sought?